that's something that I've been recently asking people, actually, if there's a moment that you feel was a real, perhaps you wouldn't be the Sheldon Dingwall that's sitting here before me today in Osaka without this particular moment. And I don't mean negative or positive, I just mean you could be either, but what do you think were like defining moment for you?
I could probably think of dozens with enough time. One early one was my sister coming home from a concert. I was too young to go to concerts. She came home, and the excitement she had, she wasn't describing the music, or maybe she did, and I tuned that out. I couldn't visualize it. The part that I really connected with me was her talking about, you should have seen the guitar he was playing. She described the colors, she described the look, and it just stuck with me that it's really important that the guitar not only sound good, but it should also be visually interesting to an audience member who doesn't know anything about guitars, and who may be, sitting 100 rows back. And so that always influenced my designs and color choices.
This episode of Life with Strings Attached was filmed on location in Osaka, Japan, on the grounds of the ancient Osaka Castle. Sheldon Dingwall is the founder and CEO of Dingwall Guitars, based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Dingwall has been the modern champion of the multiscale bass guitar, which are commonly recognized as having fanned frets. Sheldon describes his company as intensively driven, in competition with no one but ourselves, and finding the tricky balance between boutique craftsmen and corporate production-style business models. As the owner, he runs the day-to-day administration, troubleshoots production problems, and manages the online presence of his company. As designer, he conceptualizes, designs in 3D CAD, then produces the CAM files and test runs parts on their Fidel mill prior to putting parts into production. As figurehead, he says he shakes hands and kisses babies at trade shows. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Sheldon. I hope that you do too.
Probably just the castle they're closing.
Let me know when we're rolling.
We are rolling.
Yeah, all right, let's just shoot like 60 minutes of us talking about whether or not they're going to close the castle. What do you think?
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds like a good waste of time.
Yeah. So Sheldon, did you grow up in a castle like this?
I did. It was an imaginary castle. It was made of blankets and sawhorses. And my most vivid memory was taking a croquet mallet and thinking I was pounding a steak in when it was actually my sister's head.
Yes.
And man, I still remember getting in so much trouble for that.
Yeah, I imaginary beat up my siblings all the time also.
This wasn't imaginary. I actually did that.
You actually beat your sister's head with
a
a
hit her on the
mallet?
head with a croquet mallet.
Is she older than you or younger than you?
She's older, yeah.
Oh, wow. A little less concerned about it. How much older?
She was 5 years older.
5 years, yeah. I totally get that. I have older brothers that are 4 and 6 years older than I am. I had no chance, man. When you're 6-year-old and they're 12, you just get beat. That's all there is to it.
Yep.
And the croquet mallet might have been a bit of leveling. Yeah.
It was unintentional, but I remember running and hiding and then getting caught, and disciplined.
Yes.
And I think the discipline was I was young enough that I had to go back to my crib, and I remember kicking the bars out of my crib because I was so mad.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. It's a whole new side of you. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, I felt wrongly punished.
Yes.
I didn't do it on purpose.
That's interesting. Yesterday we interviewed Steve Klein and we asked him a question about moments that defined his sort of life. Mm-hmm. And he said that he has this memory of being like 5 years old and dropping his dad's double neck acoustic, like a Viennese, like old 6-string, 12-string double neck acoustic. And it broke when it hit the ground. Mm. And he remembers his dad tossing it in the garbage. And at 5 years old, it really stuck with him. And he actually began to tear up a little bit. He said, I think that all these years later, I'm still trying to build my dad's guitar.
Wow. I wish I would have seen Steve. I like him.
Yeah. He's a sweetheart. I love Steve.
Yeah.
So here we are in another city, Osaka, Japan, this time.
Yes.
Our first time here together at the same time. We've done a lot of shows around the world together, though, I think.
I think it was just 3 weeks ago we were in Bologna.
We were in Bologna, yes. Yeah, and we've been in Montreal and Berlin, maybe, or certainly Frankfurt at some point in time. And well, anyway, some guitar show somewhere in the world. And oddly enough, we end up eating, I think, sushi in a lot of them. Actually, a lot of the same food.
It's the only thing we can agree on.
Maybe. So, this has been. You've been on a whirlwind trip the last few months. Although you made a short little pit stop at home.
Yes.
But you've been traveling. You were all throughout Europe and now in Japan.
Yeah, 10 countries in Europe and then Japan. Looking forward to going home, but also kind of wishing I would have extended the trip to be able to go to Korea and Taiwan and China, because we have lots of customers there, and it's been a great experience.
I mean, do you always wish you're extending your trips? Do you ever want to just go home?
Well, it's bittersweet. I could travel nonstop forever.
Yeah.
If I could make a living at it. But by the same token, there's no place like home. You know, I miss my kids.
Yes.
Miss my wife. Miss my friends. Miss my motorcycles. Miss the team at home.
Yeah. Yeah. I figured out how to write my business and to bring my family with me for much of my history.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And so, behind the camera right now is my son Zach, and my daughter now no longer works in the company because she's had our first grandchild, her first little boy. But they're actually hopping on a plane next week or the week after, and they're going to meet us in France at Zach's home, because Zach lives in Strasbourg now, and so we're still traveling as a family. My wife Roberta's generally always with me, that, and so yeah, life and travel, I think it's one of the real key things to most of the people that we work with. I mean, certainly all the guitar makers I work with, when you ask them how they decide to do like a guitar show, it's like, how excited am I about visiting that particular place? They almost never talk about the economics of it, or unless they complain that it's too expensive for a hotel, but they don't talk about, oh, you can definitely sell guitars in Vienna or Berlin.
It's funny, you'd asked me that earlier, and I didn't want to admit that. Yeah, that is a big decision.
Yeah.
A big criteria in making the decision. Yeah, I mean, guitar makers, like all artists, aren't so much motivated by dollars. They're motivated by the experience.
Yeah.
And, if you want to have a successful guitar show, put it in a place where it's going to be an attractive experience.
Right. Yeah, it's a good place for us to go and visit, find inspiration while we're there. There's going to be good restaurants that we can go out to afterwards and talk with other people who are like my other creators. It's just been. I don't want to get in shit here for saying this, but do it anyways. I had the feeling that a lot of the guitar makers who were at this show in Osaka that we were just at put in their day at the show so they could be out having food and drinking together in the evenings, frankly. And then they came in looking pretty rough in the morning, a lot of them, because they really emphasized the social side and didn't and weren't too concerned about sacrificing the business side of it on the other side of it.
I used to do that. I found that my energy would be dried up too soon.
Yeah. And
so I discipline myself now. I go straight back to the hotel, get as much sleep as possible, manage my energy.
Yeah. Yeah, when I do an AM show, I'm almost on a liquid diet. Like, I just drink water, coffee, and like green vegetable juice. Like, I just hydrate and get me through the day. And you're right, I don't stop anymore. I don't go out for dinners typically because, I'm there for the work. But I don't think that kind of attitude is so common in our industry. You're disciplined to go back to the hotel and be ready to do work the next day. I
had to learn that, though.
Yeah.
I had to learn it the hard way.
All right. You want to share a lesson? How did you learn the hard way? What does it mean?
Well, NAMM especially is an expensive show. And the amount of effort to get to NAMM, doesn't matter how soon you start. If you start in February and prepare for the show for the next following January, you're still going to be at the last towards the finish line. You're still going to be making modifications and tweaking things, and you're still going to be adding things to try and make it the best instrument you could possibly take. And so you're going to be running on late nights and weekends and running out of energy even before you get to the show. And then you get to the show, and typically, not every guitar builder, but most of them, in order to live that lifestyle where you're alone at your bench for most of your life, that attracts an introvert. And so you put an introvert into an environment where it's noisy all day, you're talking all day, it's extremely draining. And so, for me, it would be July before I recovered. And I thought it was just the work getting ready for the show, but I found out afterwards that no, it's the drain on my introverted side that really wipes me out. And so limit the amount of extroverted activities after the show and just save them all for the show.
Yeah, that's interesting. As you say it, I know it for sure I do talk about the fact that the guitar makers are, work alone by themselves, the introverted part of it, and that it's really a lot of stimulus, perhaps overstimulus.
It is,
to come into an environment like that. And it's, when we talk about the business side of things, it makes sense to go into the crowd to do the business. But so many guitar makers I know favor these tiny little shows where it's not reasonable to expect to do very much business.
Right.
Because it's not so stressful for them. They get to hang out with their friends, and kind of the same part of the traveling part of it. That it's not and the motivation is so not the money. It's just it's to be close to friends. It's to get some support from each other, cry on each other's shoulders sometimes. And it's that community that they get together with other introverts hanging out. Not that all guitar makers are introverts. There's certainly a lot of them who are not, but the majority, I think you're right, it attracts that. For somebody who likes that and they can find a way to work alone on something they care about, that certainly describes most guitar makers for sure.
And you can live in both worlds. You can be a private introvert and a professional extrovert. And it just depends on what nourishes you and energizes you. But typically, introverted brains have more receptors, and so they're sensitive to input. But I think that also allows you to focus in on your craft and really focus in and from a number of different points of view and create a better product. That
sensitivity may be an absolutely necessary part of the equation. For sure. And so
stumped you.
Well, no, it's not stumped me. I'm just thinking about all the different possibilities at that point in time, which is generally a problem with the creative brain. It's all the which direction to take. Not that you have no direction, it's which direction to take. And so let me take a hard left turn here, and while we're talking about which direction to take, we wandered around for a while to find this camera angle. Because we have a couple of creatives here who are trying to make sure that, one, we're in a beautiful place and seeing something we want to see if we're going to do this, and then two, to make sure it's inspiring. And as you mentioned, we were in Bologna a few weeks ago, but why were we there is we were visiting Lamborghini and Pagani, and taking it in and seeing again the inspiring designs, the craftsmanship, the approach to manufacturing. I mean, inside the Pagani factory was, I don't think I'll ever forget that. That was such an interesting environment for me. The fact that they intentionally beautified their factory.
But not unlike Google or Apple. I've toured Apple, and you walk in, and it's they've put a lot of time and energy into making it a environment that is inspiring and that you want to be part of.
Yeah, I was in Industrial Light and Magic once also, and they, but I mean, they're films and special effects. So I mean, what they do to beautify is very large images of their movies and props, and you see E.T. in a bicycle there,
Right.
and my friend was working for them as one of their matte painters, and I said, hey, I'm coming to San Francisco, and I'd love to, because he offered to put me on a tour. I said, I'd love to tour the place with my family. He's like, yeah, sure, you park here and meet me at the Yoda fountain. I said, did you say Yoda fountain? Yeah, there's a little Yoda out front with his cane, with water fountain coming out there, and
You got to look down or you'll miss it.
yeah. And it was an inspiring environment too, but now maybe this is just my ignorance. I'm not a super car guy. I love design. That's why I find things like Pagani in particular very interesting, because I love the design. But the mechanics of it, I haven't put so much thought into, and I think my only idea of putting together a car probably has something a lot more to do with a shop that I've been to, like a mechanic, like repair shop, that you take your car to when you have a problem or to get your oil changed.
It's greasy,
and those are never
it's
beautiful
dirty.
places.
Yeah, no.
And so,
They're very purposeful.
and so the idea that you're building a car in this environment, but I mean, I actually did work in automotive manufacturing on some night shifts when I was very, very young. And so I did some shifts for Magna,
Oh, cool.
punch press operating and
Wow.
such, so I've done tool and die stuff. I've done a lot of actually warehouse and factory jobs when I was very, very young. And, those were always orange lighting, dark, I can smell the green stuff they put on the floor to make sure the dust stays down. And, I was talking to another guitar maker, Adam Buchwald from Iris and Circle Strings, his dad had a machine shop, and immediately I smell the oil, the grease on all the metal parts everywhere,
Cutting
right?
fluid, yeah.
And then the orange pumice that you wash your hands with, and there was none of that in Pagani.
Yeah.
None of that. No
Yeah.
smell of grease, no smell of the green, whatever the hell they call that stuff they put down on the floors to make sure the dust stays down, and I didn't think anyone needed the orange pumice on their hands. Pumice, is that right? The gritty orange soap, right?
Yeah.
I didn't see that anyone would even need it at Pagani. So is that just my ignorance, or have you been in other car factories like that?
Well, so I think what we were seeing is the assembly factory.
Yeah.
Although in the areas that we couldn't get into, yes, they were fabbing carbon fiber.
Yeah.
Maybe you would have smelled some resins and things like that on that side. But the engine work, the heavy duty mechanical work that would require oils and things like that are done elsewhere.
Right.
Engines come from Germany, AMG.
Yeah.
No idea where the transmissions come from, but a lot of that stuff would be all cleaned up before they ship it to the nice, beautiful facility.
Right.
But for sure.
So it's like the final assembly room in a guitar shop.
Yeah. But all that said, what a relaxed environment. And when you're trying to create something, I talk about this in my clinics a lot. We were in Vienna, ordered some fast food, and the person was making it with incredible efficiency and talking to somebody else. Boiling hot oil right there.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine, because it was a motion, a repetitive motion that this person had done over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And could do it without thinking and with speed. And that would be production line.
Yeah.
But when you're doing custom guitars, you're rarely doing the same thing twice. Except you're putting in frets that you're doing that over and over again.
Yeah.
But taping and dyeing, you got to slow right down and take it at a relaxed pace, and really focus. And so it's a much slower, much more maybe a process that would benefit from having a beautiful environment.
Yeah, I mean the tool chest, the snap-on tool chest, had leather handles and aluminum fittings, just like Pagani does on the inside of their and their public and their restroom inside the museum.
Yeah.
So they carried the Pagani brand all the way through it, and
I don't know. I have a friend like that. That's how he does things. Mm-hmm. If you go into his workshop, everything's like that. That's the way he's wired, though.
Yeah.
And I remember he used to do production management for a potash company. Mm-hmm. And the CEO of the potash company, how do you make him happy? Just make it perfect. There's no black and there's no gray area. Mm-hmm. It's either it's perfect or it's not. Yeah. So just make it perfect.
Right.
And he loved that because, okay, now I know what to do.
Right.
I just have to make it perfect.
Yes.
And so perfection would be even on the curtain wall behind, an even number of pleats on the left and right. It had to be centered.
Yeah.
And the CEO would count them. Or he'd notice and then he'd count them. Mm-hmm. And there'd be hell to pay because if the pleats are wrong, what else did you screw up?
Right.
So,
yes.
I think it's. I've never met Horatio Pagani, but I would imagine he has a bit of that to him, where it's, it's never good enough. It has to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I have been made aware of the Pagani utopia mm-hmm. a year or two ago, and I haven't been able to shake it. It's so inspiring to me in the mixture of modern materials and old world materials. Mm-hmm. And they described it, one of the guys giving a tour at the museum there described it as this sort of idea that you cannot place a Pagani in a particular time period because of how they mix sort of old world sort of tanned leather, vegetable tanned leather with carbon fiber with buckles. So there's not modern latches. They have this carbon fiber suitcase basically that goes in instead of you having a trunk,
Right.
And it has old leather straps with buckles on it, and it's such a wonderful contrast. And the aluminum sort of shifting mechanism that has 60 independent components on it that are all aluminum that are not highly polished. It leaves you with this sort of industrial revolution, sort of steampunk kind of, yet so refined at the same time.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
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 Or yet Jetsons at the same time.
Right.
Almost like living in a mechanical watch.
Well, that's an interesting way to put it.
Every part is done with precision and care. I remember mm-hmm. seeing the inside of a Ferrari engine, mm-hmm. and even the connecting rods mm-hmm. were artistic. Yes, they had to perform a function, but there was an aesthetic care taken to making internal parts that nobody's ever going to see.
Yeah. Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. That's the ethos, to sort of see it all the way through. The first time I came to visit you at your shop in Saskatoon, which I don't remember what year it was, but I remember you showing me your molds for your volume knobs and your pickup covers and stuff. And I had been in a lot of guitar makers' shops, but I didn't know anyone who was doing that. And that really left an impression on me. That was, to me, like what you're talking about with Ferrari. It's, although they're very visual, you see those parts, but it was seeing that all the way through. And often I look at a guitar maker's work and say, that's really good. Why did you put the normal chrome pickup covers on there with the cream rings and the WD knobs on it? Like, right. It's just, everything else is so right, and then it's just kind of, it's like putting on a really great outfit and then not caring at all about your shoes. It can just ruin the whole thing, and it's so simple. And so what I see that in you, and I see that in your work, and I've always appreciated about it, actually.
Well, thanks. I mean, there are things that people complain about that to me it's like that doesn't bother me. It was a choice. Mm-hmm. It's a conscious choice. And I think it's just a difference of opinion, but I do get knobs. And yes, on a premium product, it should have premium knobs. On a bespoke product, it should have bespoke knobs, rather than off the shelf. And a lot of that was done, I guess, because I wanted to hide the fact that we were a small shop. I always wanted to look more professional, like we had more money than we actually did, like we were more professional than we actually were. So worked really hard on the aesthetic to make it look professional.
Yeah. You know, there's a sort of pride like that I think has become more rare in our modern day. You know, there's a line in a Stevie Wonder song, Living for the City, that I'm often reminded of because my mom was that way. You know, my mom pressed seams down the middle of her blue jeans. You know, we didn't have a lot of money, but she made sure that whatever she presented was as best as she possibly could. Yeah. She still had a pride and maybe a shame of looking poor, you know, but so she put forth whatever she could. And in this, what is it? He talks about a woman who's cleans the floor for many. Her jeans are worn, but never are they dirty.
Wow. Yeah.
And there's something about just when you talk about you didn't want to look like a small company, you know, you projected something, you put yourself forth in the best possible manner within your means, you know.
Yeah, and maybe there was that vision of this is how I want to see myself, even though I'm not there yet. I think pride and shame are maybe two different sides of the same coin. And so one pushes you from one direction and the other pulls you from another direction.
Yeah. Yes. That's interesting, because I often think about our current sort of, in the Western world, we have this very polarized political environment right now, and there's always this talk about extreme left, extreme right, and you know, most of us all live somewhere not in the extremes. You know, we fill in the space between these things. Most of us are the gray, not the black or the white. You know, we're that somewhere in between them. And what I've come to realize is that this liberating sort of moment, this idea of letting things go and embracing new, is very refreshing and very young, especially when you're trying to separate yourself or define yourself. It's easier to define yourself with new ideas and new concepts, right? Because there's not so much to fight over about getting the best anymore. You're just the new, right?
Right.
And then on the opposite, because that's what the liberals are, it's a whole lot of new ideas, and some of them aren't any good, you know, but the ones that are good, the conservatives will come across and they will adopt them into the culture, and they will literally conserve them. Now, the downside of that is that they have a tendency to try and hold on to things, try and conserve what maybe we shouldn't conserve anymore. Right. You know, like 100 years ago, we were still talking about whether women should vote and whether people of different skin colors should share water fountains and sidewalks. Well, now we all think that's absolutely ridiculous. None of us think, there's no debate anymore over that, right? So what has happened is the liberals have pulled us forward and the conservatives have let go. And that's Hegel's observation about the thesis that generates the antithesis, the opposite of it, and that we actually come together in a synthesis.
Right.
And that synthesis becomes the new thesis. So that's the new conservative, which is why we have this feeling of, well, actually the conservatives now have liberal values of old, you know, and it's true, because the liberal function is to pull us forward. But the conservative function is to conserve what we still deem as valuable, so you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Right, and you get stuff done.
Yeah, exactly.
And order and the trains arrive on time. And
yes, and so now you take that same sort of, so I realize that we need fewer people talking about being right or being left, and recognizing that, well, together is how we function. A democracy requires actually an official opposition. Without opposition, you don't have democracy. You have totalitarianism, you have a monarchy, but you don't have a democracy.
Right.
And so we need those two things. And so now let me thread that needle, because when you talked about shame and pride, was that the two terms we used?
Yeah.
That to me seems likewise that sort of necessary tension, that we live somewhere between this sustaining tension of shame and pride, and that there are moments where people are doing things we say, you should be ashamed of that. Like you should not be doing that. You should be ashamed of what you just did to that person. Right?
Absolutely. In balance.
Yeah. And other moments where it's like, all right, you're getting a little too full of yourself now, buddy. Like, take it back a notch, you know? And yeah, but I think we always struggle with that. And so how do we, in a Judeo-Christian society where pride is a sin,
or maybe even in Buddhist society.
I don't know anything about it. I grew up in a Judeo-Christian society, so you could tell me maybe about something else, but I don't. But within that culture, I think it's difficult sometimes to recognize or not be self-defamating a little bit. I had two very accomplished people tell me a couple of weeks ago that they're a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. I said, what are you talking about? You're amazingly accomplished. You know lots of stuff. No, Jamie, I'm a piece of shit. I said, that kind of false, because you're not a piece of shit. I get you're keeping your ego in check, but that's no better than a false pride, a false modesty. We have to find somewhere between that. Where's the synthesis? What do you think of that? Is that just nuts? Jamie, shut up, move on.
No, I think we're all prone to negative self-talk, and that's listening to the negative self-talk and not taking a step back and going, okay, that's just my mind telling me something. Mm-hmm. I don't have to believe it. I don't have to repeat it. Mm-hmm. I'm doing it I'm on autopilot here, and I'm telling myself I'm a piece of shit because that just feels good. And I guess maybe it stems from what you were talking about, the avoidance of being too prideful. But that's a really complicated subject, because why is it bad to be too prideful? Well, because it blinds you to keeping your mind open. Mm-hmm. It potentially makes other people feel lesser than, mm-hmm. because you're taking up too much oxygen in the room. Mm-hmm. So there are many reasons why that would be distasteful. And so maybe with somebody who has so many reasons to be prideful, maybe it requires a little bit more effort to rein it in.
Well, I think you're one of those people who has a lot of reasons to be prideful, but I don't think of you as a proud person. Sheldon, you're one of the few people in our industry who is accomplished, and in my opinion, you have tipped over. You are someone who has made a substantial contribution to the guitar industry that will not be easily forgotten. Your work is going to live on for a very long time. And when we look at the introduction of the multiscale and extended range sort of instruments, that your name is going to be right alongside it for a long time from now. That could swell you with pride, but I don't think of you as a prideful or arrogant person. So what is it? How do you process that information? Are you able to recognize your success? Do you ignore it?
I'm in the center, so I don't have a perspective, right? It's much easier to have a balanced view of something if you're on the outside looking in. But I'm on the inside. All I see are, oh crap, we need to fix this. We need to fix that. Oh, we got a problem here. How are we gonna deal with that? Mm-hmm. Most of my time is spent. I shouldn't say most of my time. A lot of my time is spent fearful that, oh my God, this could crash at any moment now. Mm-hmm. Could it? No. How many times have have I experienced that in the past and I've figured it out? Thousands of times. But that fear that it could all be over tomorrow never leaves. Is that just negative self-talk? Probably. Is it motivating? Absolutely. I feel way more energized when I feel pressure that if I don't solve this now, it's gonna be a real problem. Versus the more inspirational moments where it's like, I can't wait to get out of bed because I've got a great idea I want to work on, and it's going to be awesome and it'll be exciting. So there's two sides of the coin: fear of things crashing and burning and lots of pain, and the excitement of going in a new direction. So it's pushing and pulling.
It's that tension again.
Yep.
They were talking about. And you've been through some serious shit. I mean, everyone's had some bad stuff happen in their life. I mean, your factory burnt down at one point in time, like your shop. Am I wrong?
Lost everything. Backups, 3 years worth of quilted maple, all my tooling. The next day I was shopping for a pencil so I could write stuff down. Survived stage 3 cancer, and it's funny because when you get in that situation, you have to sign a waiver.
Yes.
Because there's a 2% chance you're not going to make it off the table.
Yeah.
And I'm relatively young, relatively healthy.
Yeah.
And so that 2% is for everybody. That's for guys in their 80s or people with all kinds of health problems.
Yeah.
But that's not what your mind focuses on.
No.
It focuses on the 2% chance that you might not make it. So for the first time in my life, I actually disciplined myself to get a will together and started putting things into place. Because prior to that, I was bulletproof. And I don't know where I was going with that other than
getting through it. As bad stuff has happened, you've managed to, your factory burnt down, cancer part. Honestly, I feel bad. I forgot about it, but I remember you having the surgeries, and because they were aligning with, I think, a summer NAMM show or something, and so you had to tell me. You were like, I don't think I can make it or something of the sort, and I pushed you because what do you mean? You said you're going to be there, and I hope I wasn't a jerk in it, but
no.
You're the kind of guy who shows up. So I was like, what's happening? Why aren't you showing up? And that was a pretty good reason not. But actually, you still showed up. You didn't miss it. The dates were really close, and you stayed in the game the whole time, man. When a lot of people would have used that as a reason not to.
Yeah, I look back and I look at photos and how did I do that? Because it was, prefer to redirect the conversation.
Yeah.
But you get through it, one day at a time.
Yeah. Well, it's those, see, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, literally, often. And there are moments in everyone's life that you think, I think life would look really substantially different if that moment didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's something that I've been recently asking people, actually, if there's a moment that you feel was a real, perhaps you wouldn't be the Sheldon Dingwall that's sitting here before me today in Osaka without this particular moment. And I don't mean negative or positive, I just mean you could be either, but what do you think were like defining moment for you?
I could probably think of dozens with enough time. One early one was my sister coming home from a concert. I was too young to go to concerts. She came home, and the excitement she had, she wasn't describing the music, or maybe she did and I tuned that out. I couldn't visualize it. The part that I really connected with me was her talking about, you should have seen the guitar he was playing. She described the colors, she described the look, and it just stuck with me that it's really important that the guitar not only sound good, but it should also be visually interesting
Yes.
to an audience member who doesn't know anything about guitars,
Yeah.
and who may be, sitting 100 rows back. And so that always influenced my designs and color choices, even when it wasn't cool to, I starved for 20 years when it wasn't cool to do anything but a sunburst. Like a traditional sunburst, tobacco or three-tone.
Yeah.
I remember Mike Tobias yelling at me one time because I had a bright green, like Kawasaki candy apple green
Yes.
bass in 2000.
Okay.
And literally there are people that stopped by my booth and said, "You can't paint a guitar that color." I said, "I just did."
Yeah.
"No, but you can't do that." I said,
Why?
"I like it."
Yeah.
I've always liked this color. Why can't I?
Yeah.
You can't, And so 20 years of my career was facing that kind of attitude. And I don't really feel like I changed people's minds as much as the world changed and we connected.
I mean, that's you being an innovator and people eventually adopting it, right? I mean, that's a part of that.
Because just as easily been me being an innovator and the world, never connecting.
Yeah, it could have been.
You don't get to choose that.
Yeah.
And so there's this balance that I've started to notice, and that is, you're creating art as a form of self-expression. But if you're trying to sell art, if it's just self-expression, chances are nobody is going to connect with it. And so you also need to be trying to influence what comes out of you to be something that connects. But if it's 100% just trying to connect with other people, then you're just going to be repeating what has already been there. So, and how does that look in a guitar? Well, if I was just going after trying to connect with my audience, just trying to connect with customers, then I'd be making traditional looking instruments.
Right.
Because that's what people are buying.
Yeah.
And if I was just concerned with self-expression, then I'd be building guitars nobody wanted because it'd be so tweaky and so personalized to me that they wouldn't connect with anybody. So there's a middle ground where, and it takes a long time to figure it out. There's a middle ground to try and find something that feels authentic, is authentic, yet considers what other people want enough to connect with them.
Yeah, we all negotiate our place in the world. We negotiate who we are. We do something, all our friends laugh at you. You adjust a little bit because you didn't like the way it felt, right?
Yeah.
You do something else and everyone says, "Oh man, I love when you do that." You're like, "Oh, I'm going to do that a little more often," right? And we all negotiate, and it's the same thing with making your art or product, is you have to sort of find that space between fulfilling your need and someone else's.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a number of very artistic guitar makers who refuse to do the same thing twice because they find no value in it, and that's fine. But man, it's a tough go. It's feast or famine because there's no momentum. There's no, people can't, if 100 people like it, well, only one can buy it.
Right.
And 99 might not like the next one you make.
Yes.
Right? And so you're almost restarting every single time, which very few people can pull off. But they make the choice to do it. I mean, it's a very, very small handful of people who do, but if you want to make a business of it and figure out how to sustain your family or your goals and such, then you're going to have to meet more needs than just your own.
100%.
Yeah.
Or have a side hustle that provides a predictable income.
Yeah.
Because a life in the arts is a very unpredictable income. You never know. You never know when you're going to sell, unless it's a commission. But then you have no way to judge the cost because it's fresh and new. It's a new creation. There's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson talks about that brilliantly, and how hard it is to make a living in the arts.
Yes.
With creativity.
Yes.
And I've lived it. And I went, yes, 100% on the money.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I saw an interview with him and Joel Haji, who is the manager for Damien Hirst and Gerhard Richter, a few really important living artists. And they had a good discussion about creativity and artists and what a real artist is. And there was some discussion about that real artistship, and meaning that you're selling stuff, right? Like you're an artist when you're selling stuff. You can tell yourself that you are an artist because you think of creative things. You do that. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about I'm an architect, I'm a doctor, I'm an artist, I'm a truck driver, those are verbs. It means that we're actually we're making a transaction, and that's what we talk about when we're talking about making a living.
Right.
Otherwise you're whatever. You're a lawyer or a truck driver who likes to make guitars on the side.
Yeah,
So as an artist, you have to be able to make transactions if you're going to define yourself as a professional artist, that is, of course.
Right. It's like if a tree falls in the forest, does anybody, and nobody hears it.
Nobody's there. They didn't make a sound.
Yeah, what's that quote? So if you create art and nobody wants it, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, it's good for yourself, which is fine, as long as you're not trying to make a living doing it. Because if you're trying to make a living doing it, then it has to not just be for you, but also for someone else.
I get it. Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so that's that negotiating who I am and who you are, and finding that space where you find something I've created to be valuable enough to want to invest in it. And that's when an artisan makes a transaction, with somebody who says, oh, wow, that's really amazing. I don't know how you did that. That's fantastic. And, well, I want that a part of my life. And then they give you their money for it somehow, right? I mean, that's how it works.
The whole pride shame thing also fits into that neatly, where when you're creating the work, there's a lot of pride involved in that. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't sell, the's a lot of shame, that follows. Yeah.
Yes.
What's wrong with me? Why can't I connect?
Yeah.
Why does nobody get what I do? It's a pretty painful place to be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you adopted a philosophy, a technology. How do we describe the idea of multiscale, which was called fan fret for most times, and I'm still on a mission to abolish the whole fan fret thing, unless we're talking about installing frets and where we're going to fan them. But the idea is simply that, that we can have a different or a different way of sort of string tension and evenness of tone and such from one string to the next. That most people would say you don't need to do it. A jazz bass is perfectly fine. Right. It was good enough for Jaco. It was good enough for Jamerson. It was good enough for fill in the blank.
Right.
Nobody needs your silly multiscale fan fret bass. And then there was a certain portion of people who went, oh, I see what you're talking about, and that's interesting. There's an acceptance curve to that. Mm-hmm. And you've been doing that for more than 30 years now.
Yep.
On that. And so
20 of them, it was basically an echo of anybody out there?
Yes.
Out there. Not 100% true. We always had backwards. We always had support with the engineers, and mainly engineers. They got what we did.
Their business was sound. Their profession was sound. Is that what you mean, the engineers?
No,
sound engineer,
engineering mindset.
Oh, engineering minds.
Like Rolls-Royce engineers and
mechanical, logical, rational thinkers.
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Less influenced by fashion, more influenced by performance.
Yeah.
And they could see it, they could get it.
Yeah.
And that connected emotionally with them. Mm-hmm. Versus hearing Adam's Adam Nolly Getgood's mix and going, holy cow, I've never heard bass sound like that. That's what connected with the majority of players. So the engineers connected on an intellectual level, and then Adam, for the most part, helped create the emotional connection with a multitude of players. Nobody buys, Bob Lutz said, nobody buys anything without an emotional connection. You can run it through spreadsheets all you want, but in the end, the conclusion you come up with is the one that makes you feel good. In other words, I compared all the features of all those guitars. I compared all the pricing, and I came up with the one that gives me the most features for the least amount of money, and now I'm happy. I feel good.
Yeah. I mean, I regularly harp on Loewy's description of equal quality, equal function, equal price, then they buy the better looking one. So yeah, once you reconcile quality, function, and price, once you reconcile those things, then you can switch over to emotions at that point in time. But I think you still have to reconcile the functional object. Because I mean, an instrument is a functional object.
I'm going to add one more thing to that.
Okay.
The personal connection.
Personal connection.
We talked about that a little bit earlier, and that's one of the reasons why I've been on tour for 6 weeks.
Yes.
Equal design, equal function, relatively equal tone and performance.
Yeah.
If I shake your hands and look you in the eye,
Yeah.
and we connect as humans, then you're going to prefer, you're automatically going to feel more connected to,
More disposed,
to
predisposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would much rather support somebody I know and like. I will get much more out of that product, and I hate to call it a product, but I'm using product in a general sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I will enjoy my new mountain bike much more because I feel connected to that company.
Yes.
They're not. They didn't. It's not just a corporation that sold me a widget to do a job. No, this is the experience. As I'm riding it,
Yeah.
it'll be better.
Yes.
So, I kind of cut you off there at the knees, but
No, I don't think so. I think it's another variable, but you're only willing to go so far. I think it's possible that you'll favor the person to pay a little bit more money, possibly.
yeah,
And if quality doesn't matter so much to you, the personality might have you playing a lesser quality product because you like that person more, for the personal connection. Quality,
within reason.
function, and the functionality of it, you might be willing to put in a little more work to playing something because of your connection to that person.
Yeah.
I think that it's certainly something, but the word that we're missing at the beginning is that when we take two products that are equal and that's that we've already leveled them out so
Right.
that we're approaching them in an equal setting.
Right.
So they're equal in quality, in function, and in price. Then we choose the better looking one. Was what Raymond Loewy was talking about with industrial design and the reason of beautifying things. The first thing that Loewy ever got a contract for industrial design, because he was an illustrator, is he did some illustration work with, I think, the Pennsylvania Railroad Company, although it might have been a different one. But the point is, an early 20th century railroad company that was coming in and out of New York.
Yeah.
And he said, I love trains. I want to design a locomotive for you. And the guy said, that's really interesting. You know what? We're having a problem with the trash cans at Penn Station. Do you think you could help us with them? He said, yes, I can. I'll have 3 options for you on your desk in like 2 days or 3 days. And Loewy designed a better functioning and better looking trash can for Penn Station.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and guess what? He eventually got to design trains. And the first sort of streamlined locomotives, we went from basically being like an oil barrel and like a stack pipe on it into these beautiful, long sort of sloping machines.
Yeah.
That's sort of Raymond Loewy's sort of period. And but he had to make it function And of course, the fact that he shook his hand probably did mean something for two industrial designers as to why he got the job over someone else. But then he still had to perform. And I think you going around the world shaking people's hands, I mean, trust me, you know this. I've spent a lot of years on the road. I've been in every major city in North America, every state, every province, most of Europe. I totally agree with you with meeting people and making a difference face to face. I'm not trying to argue that at all. But in the end, if your bass sucked, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm speaking equitable products, and there is no best bass guitar. There is no best guitar. There are guitars that are really, really at the top of human ability to make something that functional and that beautiful. But is a Federa better than a Tobias?
Right.
Well, yes to the Federa customers, no to the Tobias customers.
Right.
So in that case, why do they choose one over the other if they're relatively equal in tone, construction, quality, and so on and so forth?
It's the relationship in the tribe. And you actually really do see that with, particularly at the NAMM show. And bass players are different. Guitar players come by themselves, maybe with a friend. Bass players, there'd be like a whole community. It's like churches happening at the Tobias booth. There's like 20 people sitting there, man, and they're playing, they're passing the bass back and forth to each other. Oh man, check this out. And they're giving it back and forth to each other the whole time. And I don't see that I see it a little bit with drummers, but I don't see it. Bass players are different. There's a communal, which is funny because there's always one bass player in the band, but when they get together, and there's a tribe of people at Mike Tobias's booth, and there's a tribe of people around the Dingwall booth in a different kind of way.
Very, very supportive of each other.
Yeah.
That could just be bass players, or it could also be the culture that a brand develops. And that happens organically. How you treat your customers. The customers that you piss off because of your style of dealing with them, they go to somebody else. And the customers that really appreciate how you treat them stick with you.
Yeah.
And so you, one by one, you develop a culture around your business. Had a point, lost it, remembered it again, and I've lost it a second time.
The relationships, meeting people, you think that's a defining difference?
I think it's important. I've experienced that myself, and continue to re-experience it. And I've heard it echoed from artists. There's one artist in particular, I'm quoting her right now, I sat back and I thought, yeah, you're right. But it's the same thing with musicians. I've been working with Lee Sklar for almost 30 years, and he would introduce me to other studio people, and they're all like A-level guys, and I was struck by just how cool they were. They were just the most kind, gentle, open-minded, welcoming people I'd ever met. And I asked Lee about that, and he said, well, yeah, because nobody hires back the guy that's difficult.
Right.
And you can be great at what you do, but if you're a pain to be around, nobody wants to hire you again. So it's important to work on your social skills as an artist, no matter what genre it is, as a musician, as a guitar builder, as a visual artist, I would imagine as well.
Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. Yeah, even in my work in curating a show, big reveal here, folks.
if I see somebody who's constantly ranting and raving at people and social media and doing things going off the handle, I just got to express myself. I just have to say, and they calling people's names and airing their dirty laundry.
Telling it like it is.
I'm like, oh man, their guitars get them through the door, but I can't have them through the door.
Right.
Because I got to put 30 guitar makers in the same space who have to get along for 4 days. And I just can't imagine taking the risk of having someone beside that person for 4 days. And so it's the same thing with like what Lee Sklar said. And I've experienced the same thing with session players for sure. It's all a bunch of sweet, loving, nice people who get along because exactly no one calls back the asshole. Like it just doesn't. Sometimes every once in a while you have to and you're like, ugh, I got to call them in. But for the most part, it just is a level of attrition. There's an evolution that happens that where you favor the easy to get along with person when there's a certain, but again, they have to already be the quality, function, and price.
Yeah.
And then at that point in time, you're choosing who you want to hang out with.
Yep. Yeah, creativity is, to me, it's like vapors. The creative ideas, they're not solid. They're just kind of floating around, waiting for you to condense them into a solid.
Yeah.
And that requires you to be open to them and not distracted by trying to deal with the negative energy of somebody else.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that unless you're trying to survive, in which case some negative pressure is probably a good thing to motivate you.
Sure.
But if you're trying to create, you need a positive environment. You need people that don't cause friction and hold you back.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that. And you can still create, but the friction holds you back. You could create better if you didn't have the friction.
Yeah, but then we negotiate that in the relationship, right? Those friction, like we rub those friction points off of each other, and we get along easier. I remember many years ago, I had when I had a retail store, Marcus Miller came in to do a clinic with us, and he tells this story about one of his first sessions in New York, and he was a hot young bass player. He was doing great, and they did this song, they did this take, and Marcus closed his eyes and was playing his ass off. It was fantastic. And he opened his eyes, and this big burly piano player was in front, came across the room at him, grabbed him by the shirt and pinned him against the wall and said, "If you ever fucking close your eyes in a session with me again, I will end you."
Wow.
Well, guess what Marcus doesn't do in sessions anymore? It wasn't the piano player who had to change. I mean, he probably can't threaten everyone who comes in the room either, but the band leader needs to take the band somewhere, and someone is all full of themselves and off in their own little world.
Yeah, they're not playing for the song anymore.
Yeah. And that was a big lesson for him. That's why he shared it in the clinic, but again, that's us learning how to negotiate our relationship with everyone else around us. And so that's a good lesson. And I will tell you, there was a guitar maker who contacted me. We were talking, and I had to say, and I won't name them. I said to them, "Man, it's not your guitars." He's like, "What?" I said, "It's not your guitars. Your guitars deserve to be at the NAMM show and the Boutique Guitar Showcase. The problem is you."
That must have been a hard conversation to have.
It was, but you know what? He shut up, he listened, we talked about it, he got his shit together.
Wow.
And he's been in the BGS, and he's been very pleasant and easy to get along with, and he doesn't do the shit he used to do anymore. And so sometimes you know this, you're an employer, you've got employees, you can't be nice guy all the time, and it's not beneficial to be nice guy all the time. Sometimes we got to be straight and say, "Hey, it's not your work, it's you."
Yeah, I lack that ability. I have a person now who can do that, and it's made all the difference.
Yeah.
You're right, you can't be Mr. Nice Guy all the time.
It's not helpful.
It actually creates a negative environment.
Yeah.
Or it enables.
Yes. You can't raise children that way.
Yeah.
If you can't tell them where the line is, they'll constantly do things to test the line. They want you to tell them where the line is. The line is no, or the line is, educate them. Hey, if you do this, this is going to happen, right? And then the tough part is following through when you're the person to tell them what to happen. I remember Dad going off at it because his kid, at the end of a long day, we were near a theme park, and kids are hot, probably jacked on sugar all day, and the kid and the dad's like, Jessica, stop it, Jessica. 1, 2, Jessica, 1. You know what happens after 2, Jessica? I leaned in, I said, 1? She knows you're lying.
Yeah.
Kids learn to lie from their parents because it's hard to be the person who says, bring it back to that scenario, hey, it's not your guitars.
Yeah.
That's hard. And I have to take the risk for me to possibly look like the bad guy in order to improve the scenario for the greater good.
Wow. I mean, it's a gift to him to have somebody actually take him aside and help him out. Just like if it was fretwork that needed to be addressed.
Right. Just like anything. Yeah. But you'll take the risk where, one person will thank you for it, the other person will hate you for it.
Yep.
And you have to be willing to be hated because you were trying to help sometimes. And so, anyways, it's been a defining role for me. I understand that part of my role is I'm a supporter and an encourager and enabler. That is part of my role in what I do professionally and part of the community, my family. But I also know that part of my role is that I am disagreeable, not obstinate, but I'm willing to disagree. And that, what is it? There's a great quote from George Bernard Shaw, and I'll try and paraphrase here. And he said, the agreeable person conforms to the world around them, whereas the disagreeable person insists on the world conforming to them.
Right.
And therefore, all progress depends on the disagreeable person. There is no progress without that depender, or without that disagreeable person. And it's one of the key factors in any successful entrepreneur, is you have to rank fairly high in disagreeableness, but you should also rank high in empathy.
Right.
And so you're empathetic, you're trying to actually help, but you're not someone who just goes along with whatever someone's saying, oh, right, even though in mind you're thinking, no. And I know you're kind and disagreeable. And you fit that on the entrepreneurial scale, because you certainly have no problem telling me, Jamie, I don't quite see it that way, and
Well, a lot of that has to do with safety, and I hate the word safety in terms of personal relationships, because you're not going to hurt me,
right?
Or it's not going to end up in fistfights.
Right. I'm not a threat. Yeah.
But you're also open-minded enough to listen. And you have very strong opinions, but I've always known you to be a person to, no matter how strong your opinion is, if somebody poses a good argument to you, you'll stop and you'll think about it. You may not agree with it, but you'll at least think about it. And there's this, that provides a forum where someone is free to disagree with you and feels safe to disagree with you, or offer a counterpoint.
I'm more interested in the truth than I am in being right.
100%.
Do I like being right? Sure I do. Everyone does, but I'm much more interested in the truth. So that 100%. Means you have to be willing to be wrong.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
the truth should be the guiding principle always.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. We couldn't have timed that any better. Did you feel the warm glow of the sun as we started to talk about that? The truth breaking through the clouds?
It has changed color as we've gone through this and angle.
Yeah, absolutely. Sheldon, thank you so much for joining me on Life with Strings Attached. I have enjoyed getting to know you over the last, 20-ish years, possibly 15, 20 years, something like that. Yeah. And I'm so thrilled to be able to hang out in different places, because we both love traveling and trying new things.
We both love guitars.
Yeah, inspiring places, inspiring things. And so...
What a great world, what a great industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love every part of it. It's never been easy, but I love, especially looking back, I love the process of building guitars. I love our customers. Consider every single one of them to be a friend. Yeah.
Well, that wraps you up pretty nicely. Is there something that, had I been a better interviewer, I should have asked you, or something you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
Who my favorite K-pop artists are? I don't know.
I met a K-pop artist once, but I don't remember their name at all. We had this brilliant moment where an archtop maker who doesn't want their guitar called a jazz guitar, because they believe that archtops shouldn't be just boxed into jazz, even though we call them jazz boxes.
Yeah.
You know? And we took it on the very first Western tour, and in Seattle, we were in a store that doesn't sell archtop guitars.
Okay.
And a K-pop star, apparently, was in town passing through. He came in for something else. I don't remember what it was. Strings, amplifier repair, something of the sort. And he came into the boutique guitar showcase, and he picked up, it was Megan Wells archtop, and she's a lovely human. And he, for the first time in his life, played an archtop guitar. And it was one of those things where there was a good amount of people in the room. I don't know, maybe not huge, but maybe 30 people. And he started playing, and not loud. He was not a center of attention kind of person. And slowly but surely, all of the conversation in the room kind of came to a stop, because he was just so musical in what he was doing.
That's cool.
And by the end, no one was talking and everyone was watching him, but he had his eyes closed now, and he finished. And you could see he sort of came back to reality, looked around the room, and didn't know. And he bought it. He took it home.
That's cool.
And those are the things that get me so excited. In an environment where this doesn't happen, a guitar which you've never tried before, never experienced before, to the most unlikely kind of artists in the unlikely kind of places. And that, to me, is why I love just going open-handed to the world and saying, do you want to see? with all these amazing instruments. And so I don't have any, but I don't know his name, but that's my favorite K-pop artist. Because I heard him play guitar in Seattle once.
Be interesting to track him down and see,
Would be interesting.
where is that guitar? Is it on his wall?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it next to his studio setup?
No idea. I don't know if Megan ever got a hold of him. But anyways, I digress. We could talk forever, but we shouldn't. We should wrap this up, and maybe we can catch a little bit more of Osaka Castle before the sun goes down. And what an amazing life. And thank you. I feel better. I feel like I'm a better person for knowing you, Sheldon. And thank you for that.
Well, Jamie, thank you for all you do for the guitar community, the boutique guitar community especially. And I'm interested to fast forward 10 or 20 years and look back and just see the impact you've made.
Well, time will tell, I guess.
Time will tell.
So we meet here in 20. It's been here for 400 or 500 years. It'll probably be here in 20. Shall we come back?
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, well, hopefully people will still be playing guitar then, and hopefully they'll still be playing our basses. Certainly, that's in my mind when that our instruments go out, and that 300 years from now, people will still be making music with them.
Yes. Yeah, there's lots of musical instruments that are hundreds of years old, but not guitars yet because they haven't existed. But there's no reason to think that your basses couldn't be existing 1,000 years from now, to be honest. Acoustic instruments survive 400 years. A solid body instrument like yours can be
longer.
Millennia.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hopefully you still get parts for them.
Yeah. Put them in a time chest now. Unlock it 1,000 years from now.
Yeah. Just a parts kit.
Yeah, perfect.
Some 9-volt batteries, because they...
Definitely 9-volt batteries. Yeah.
All right, Jamie,
man.
thank you.
Thanks, Sheldon. All good? Thank you for watching and listening. You can find more episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts,
And a special thanks to those who support us on Patreon. It's your support that enables us to do this work.